Well, this will be a fun curiosity conversation with a business entrepreneur extraordinaire, a dear friend of mine, someone who I've known for many years, and someone that I think is at the highest levels in business when it comes to developing relationships and also having presence. You know, a lot of people, and we hear this often, a lot of people are really good at collecting dots and gathering information, but not many people are good at connecting the dots. And my guest today is Milan Gandhi of MedShare, who is a master at connecting the dots and leveraging networks and really having presence. So, Milan, welcome. It's great to see you this morning.
Thank you for having me. I've never heard it described that way, gathering dots and connecting them, but I appreciate the kind words.
Yeah, you know, a lot of people have a particular expertise, and they're really good at collecting data or collecting business cards. But you seem to be really good at understand how to connect dots moving forward, and that's a talent I think that has a lot to do with your personality, your genuine interest in others, and growing your practice. But it really comes off in everything that you do. So I'm really excited to have this, what I call a curiosity conversation with you, even though we've known each other for years.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I was thinking back, I don't remember how we met or when we met. I'm sure it was politically involved, but you and I have developed such a great friendship and respect for each other. We're also politically active in our circles, and we try to help each other out. But give me an understanding for, or give our audience also an understanding for, when it comes to events, you attend, like me, sometimes 2 or 3 events in a day.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it is a serious business.
It's a slog. Yeah.
Yeah. You have them calendared out. You host your own events, whether they're at your house or at restaurants or venues. But give me an idea for how much time goes into your preparation for events that you plan or that you attend.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. What I'll say is that the pandemic was so hard for me personally because I am an event person. Whether events are 5 people or 50 or 500, I just like gathering with people. To me, the energy of the room and the environment and the people you're with creates so much excitement for me and possibilities that Zoom or things like that, the 2-dimensional world that people live in now, is very difficult for me to be effective, to be engaged. I get very distracted on Zoom. Don't schedule a Zoom meeting for me. You're going to lose my attention. But preparing for events, yeah. I mean, what I would say is that what I do is I try to put together groups of people who are going to benefit each other, groups of people who are potentially going to benefit me by being together. And you know, I was actually just kind of looking at this morning and thinking about this morning. I have a bunch of partial season ticket packages to different sporting events and teams, Pistons, Red Wings, some college basketball. And I'm thinking about which games I want to go to and who I want to take with me. In certain cases, I have 2 tickets. In certain cases, I have 4. And which games I want to give away, because giving a gift to somebody can be as valuable as sharing an experience with them. So the preparation for me is trying to maximize what value I can give to somebody and give to the group of people that I may be putting together.
I couldn't agree more on the Zoom aspect of things. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was useful to leverage the technology when that's all that we had for a brief moment in time. But the second we could get back, you and I talked about actually planning an event together.
We did,
which we still need to work on that. But although we plan our own political and business events, and I know that we collaborate on those. In terms of bringing people together that can mutually benefit, I think that's one of the greatest things that we can do is make those opportunities available for people and suggest to others, you should attend this event because you're going to meet so-and-so who I think could help further advance your business or your interests. I think that's a very useful, a very smart way to utilize events. Mm-hmm. You mentioned something about gifting, entertainment, whether they're season tickets or whatnot. Yes. How often are you doing that? Is that a part of your marketing budget? Is it something that you put a lot of thought into, or I'm going to allocate this many tickets and I have a list of people that I think about? Are they prospects? Are they friends? Are they potential client collaborations? What kind of thought process goes into that?
I do have lists. Yeah. First of all, these lists are in a very sort of rudimentary spreadsheet, but I've got them paged out by categories of people that I would like to give a gift to, people I'd like to share an experience with, people that I think could go together. I tend to reorder the list pretty often, like, oh, I should put this person with this person. So I'll move them on the list so that when an opportunity comes up, and it's not just tickets to a game, I have season tickets to the Fisher Theater. I go golfing and will take people golfing. I end up sponsoring a lot of golf outings and foursomes and things like that. So between golf, the theater, sporting events, there's lots of opportunities to do that kind of thing. And I try to be intentional about it, for sure. It is certainly a part of our marketing budget. I would say that's ebbed and flowed over the years. There was a time where we probably put a lot more time, money, and resources into that sort of thing. And I think it ran its course, it had its value, and then it didn't anymore. And we took a number of years off and didn't have anything like that. And recently have kind of gone back to it. Again, I think, particularly with everybody being as isolated as they were during 2020, I really think human contact, shared experiences, the bonding, the connections that you can create between two people or a group of people by spending an afternoon together is so much more important than ever before.
I couldn't agree more. Now, do you golf at all? Do you because it seems like all of my friends golf, and they always tell me, where else can you get 4 hours with a prospect or with a current client? Is that a part of your
Absolutely.
world?
I'm a golfer. It's funny. I'm a member at a club, and people will ask me when I say, "Oh, I'm a member at," it's called Walnut Creek Country Club. You're a member at Walnut Creek. Oh, do you know so and so and so and so? And I'll say, you know what? I gotta be honest. I don't know that many people there. I wish I did. My wife and kids know a lot of people there. When I go to the club, I'm almost always bringing guests with me. So people who are not members there. So I spend my time with not members at the club. But yes, golf is a great way to get 4 hours alone with somebody. Mm-hmm. And more than just the time, there is something about sharing a round of golf that is an undeniable bond. I've played golf with, I can think of a few people right now, once in my life, 10 or 12 or 15 years ago. But when I see them, we will always remember that round and share the memory of that golf experience. Different than any other experience. Golf has a particular, bonding element to it between two men, between two people in general.
And of course, you remember who took whose money, right?
Oh, yeah. And you got to know when to lose.
Good point. You talked about your list preparation and that you make them. So similar to me, we both have those types of lists. How do you segment your lists? Is it, you mentioned categories. I mean, are you just using an Excel sheet and just kind of name business and how you'd like to advance the relationship? I mean, how often are you looking at that, and how much time do you put in that on a daily basis?
So what ends up happening is the lists evolve over time. I take one list and use it to create a new one, a lot of times around events. And I do, like you, a lot of political fundraisers and things like that. So what I'll do is I'll say, all right, this is an event for a, Republican congressional candidate. Let's look at the one I did for a Republican senatorial candidate last cycle. Let's look at that list. Let's see who donated. Let's see who had interest. Let me augment it with some more people. Let me grab this list over here that I, for this other event I did, and try to put things together. So I do a lot of thinking that way about putting the right groups of people together, not only to achieve a goal like raising money, which is important, but also to have a high quality event. I recently did an event at my home where, I was a political fundraiser. It was for a Democrat in that case. But what I did was to make sure that there were enough people there and enough high quality people there where the event was going to feel like it had some value beyond the dollars that we raised. And we raised some money, but that was certainly, my priorities were 1A and 1B in terms of raising money and making sure it was the right crowd and the right environment. My methods are varied. I have scribble scratches everywhere that end up going, I hand them to my assistant to go onto a list. She keeps for me many spreadsheets or a few spreadsheets that have tabs on them. And then I'm a paper and pencil guy a lot of times. So I'll often say to her, I'll text her, hey, print out this list for me if I'm on my way to the office, so that when I get there, I've got ideas. I've got something in my mind I want to get down. I'll take a list and I'll start circling people and moving them over here and adding some names, some people I maybe met recently or reconnected with recently that I want to put together. I attended an event recently. It was, I call it an adult bachelor party. It was a gentleman who's in his 70s, a family friend of ours, a pillar of our community, the Indian community, who does this event for his friends, basically. And they spend the weekend at Casino Windsor, Caesars, having dinner and entertainment and gambling and just really just a guy's weekend. Most of the guys there are in their 70s. A handful of us young guys were invited, and we're honored to be invited because we've never been invited before. But I took note of who was there. I took note of who was connected to whom. And when I left there, I had ideas and notes in my phone. I just kind of typed a bunch of notes to myself about who I could later connect with and what groups of 2s, 3s, 5s, 10s would actually go together. And I don't necessarily have an occasion yet. I just know that they're a team that I can put together for something.
That they appreciate to be with each other.
They appreciate being with each other, and I would appreciate being with them.
So you mentioned something that I thought was pretty savvy. So after you leave the event, sometimes to decompress and think about all the people that you just interfaced with and interacted with, it could be a lot of people, and they're all high-powered, and these are people that you want to continue to bring within your network. So my old style fashion is I keep a note card in my pocket. I write these things down. So you'll actually pull out the phone, you send an email to yourself with all the names of people that you want to follow up with?
Yeah, I've got a little notepad app on my phone.
Okay.
Or sometimes that's not appropriate, and I also keep scratch pads in my pocket at all times.
Yeah.
Always have a pen. Always have business cards. I don't use them as much.
Yeah.
But this is my daily uniform.
Sure.
I every day carry with me. I also have a list of all state legislators in my pocket at all times, and committee hearings, committee assignments, and who's on what committee and all that. From the fine folks at PAA, I carry this with me always, literally every day. And so my point is, I make scribble notes when that's the appropriate move. If I'm at an event at, let's say, a hotel ballroom, right, like a conference or something, there's typically some paper and pen around. I will often use that, put it in my pocket, and then when I get back to the office, I transcribe that into a spreadsheet or whatever it may be.
And how important has it been to utilize that strategy when you're attending events? Because you come across a lot of people. I know a lot of people that know a lot of people, and you're somebody that not just knows them, but knows what they do and knows what they're after. So to take copious notes of people, how effective is that? How important has that been to your networking strategy?
Very important. So here's what I'll say. People often offer business cards. I'm not one who does that as often. I know you're less of a believer in the business
I'm the anti-business card guy.
The anti-business card guy. I do think at some point they could have value, but I think they are overused and poorly used more often than not. But if I do get a business card, I will always write a note on the back of it as to whom they are and maybe what they're into or what connection, some note to remind me of what it is I think I can do for them or who I could connect them to or whatever it may be. And then in my phone, when I store somebody in my phone, it's interesting. It's kind of comedy sometimes if you look at, they just have a name and a phone number, but then they have like 17 words of notes in the phone. I put it in their nickname or title or something like that so that when it pops up on my phone, if they're calling, it has all those names there. It may have Derek, because I met them through you, comma, 220, that's where I met them, comma, this person's fundraiser. So that I remember, okay, this is how I know them and this is where I met them.
And that's just going into your contact app of your phone, or are you putting that into a more intuitive database?
Nope. I am low tech. I go into my contacts in my phone, and no matter what phone you have, there are more fields than just first and last name and phone number. Find a field you like.
Yeah.
Use it consistently. Be consistent about it. Use the same field every time. In my case, I think it's nickname is the one that I use. And I just make a bunch of notes in there because what happens is then when they call, that also shows up below their phone numbers, all those nickname notes.
So that's pretty savvy. What type of information are you trying to extract when you meet somebody? And for the most part, at these events, you got like 30 seconds to 2-3 minutes. I mean, if it's a first interaction, you don't want to go too far beyond that because you want to be sensitive to their time and they want to meet other people, and so do you. So what kind of information are you trying to gather in that couple 2-3 minutes? Are you trying to learn about their family? Are you trying to learn about business? Is it all focused in politics? Give us an idea.
Yeah, I suppose it depends on the context a little bit, where I am. But what I would say is that, so first of all, I'm always in a mode of self-improvement. So what I would say is that I don't do a great job of slowing down. You said a moment ago, how deep do you go with somebody when you meet them for a minute or two? Usually too deep. Is the answer. And so Where I think I can improve is certainly to put the brakes on a little bit and ask more questions. But in general, what I try to do is to find out what it is that they're most interested in. And if it is family, if that's the first thing that comes out of their mouth, well, I've got a wife and children and a family, and I enjoy talking about my family. So let's see if there's a connection there. If they're all politics and this is a political event and that's the context of things, we start, I understand what it is that brought them to this event and what it is we may share in common. And I think that's important. Why are you here is probably my, I may not ask it that way, but that's essentially why I'm asking. What I want to know is, why are you here? I know why I'm here. And is there something that we share in common, on why we're both here?
Yeah, typically that commonality is for the candidate or for the philanthropic organization or the business networking event that the association may put together. So there's a lot of things to share. I find that, and I think you may find this as well, that most people show up to these things to meet others and to advance their business interests. So I'd love to know a little bit about some of the questions that you might prompt people to help, further an engaging dialogue between two strangers.
So, it's funny you say people go to events to meet other people. I couldn't agree more, which is why during 2020, when candidates are saying, well, let's do like a Zoom fundraiser, I would say, I don't understand. What am I selling here? I'm selling a screen? No, when I do an event for any candidate at any level, and I do them for township trustees, and I do it for state reps and state senators, all the way up to congressional candidates and governors, I'm selling not only the opportunity to meet the candidate, and that is certainly very important, but who else is going to be there? And I think when people go to an event and, even when the event is so crowded that they're not able to spend quality time with the candidate, but they meet other people there and they have a good experience, I feel like they feel like their money was well spent, number one, and that they'll come back again, number two, for the next one, whatever it may be. But my questions when I meet somebody are usually centered around, again, what brought you here? What is your background, profession, community that brought you to this? And what may I know about your background, community, profession that I can create some common interest, some comfort, some rapport? Because I do think it's important to be well-read, well-studied, worldly of sorts, to have some information or some opinion on many things. I do try to read a lot. I not just news, but more interest pieces. Things that come out of other publications other than the News and the Free Press, for example, or the New York Times or Fox News. I try to, and I do, by the way, read both the News and the Free Press, Fox News, and the New York Times, because I like to know what it is that people from different backgrounds, how they will interpret the same event or story. But the questions I usually ask, and I don't necessarily have a script I go off of, it's really more, how do I get to know somebody?
Yeah, I think that having that information and bringing that knowledge to the table, it makes for the conversation to be more interesting and engaging. So you take a lot of time to prepare on a daily basis, and it's not necessarily preparing for the blocking and tackling of events. It's more important for you to have information that you might be able to leverage, you might be able to share, you might be able to offer as advice or information to help further a dialogue between a new connection, correct me if I'm wrong.
Absolutely. And I would say that as I meet people and as I'm hearing their story, even the 30-second version of it, my mind always goes to the place of, what is it that I can do that can benefit them? Whether it's an introduction, it's a piece of information, it's an opinion, a thought on something that they are involved in some area of whatever, and I have a thought on that. That might be something different, contrary to popular theory, whatever it may be. I like to offer something to them. And I have a friend who is in the wealth management business, and he works for a very prominent wealth management firm here in town. And he's a younger guy. He's actually my younger brother's classmate from high school. And he's always asking for advice, and I like him. He's a good kid, and I like to see him succeed. And I've watched him succeed, no doubt. But one of the things he always asks me is, he says, how do I make these relationships with people so that I can get some business from them.
Mm-hmm.
And at least he used to ask me questions like that. And I think he started to get it a little more now, which is, no, first make the relationship, give something of yourself, whatever it is you can give.
Mm-hmm.
And then the business will come. One of the reasons I think I have a great network of people and of friends and associates and people that I can call on is because I've never asked them for anything. I've tried to give first. And I do. I walk around all day thinking about how I can give others something. And again, knowledge, relationships, connections, these don't cost anything.
Right.
I don't lose them by giving them. I retain them and I can give them to somebody else. So that's what I try to do, is to benefit others. And then the benefit will come back to me sometime, somewhere, maybe never one-to-one, but overall it'll be a positive thing.
Yeah, I think you've mastered that give before you get, without any expectation mentality. I see it in all the events that you attend, and also I see it in the caliber of people that you've built around you. So I see that continuing to evolve and continuing to increase in their they're very substantial people. I mean, this is the governors, this is congressional leaders, this is people that are running multi-million-dollar businesses across the country and even globally. So to your credit, I have witnessed that firsthand, that give to get mentality. Go back, if you could, on the event side of things, because I know you like to host your own events, which I think is a very smart way to build a network around you in curating the right invitation list and getting the right people there. Some people are at the point in their career where they can send out an email and they can send out, maybe 50 invites, and they get, 40 people to respond and people show up, and that's pretty solid. I'm at the point in my career where I still like to call people and make that personal invitation, especially if there's somebody that means a lot to me. So we put our events together sometimes with 300, 400, 500 people to attend, but I do like to call people. So how often are you inviting people personally to the events that you host, or are you just sending out an email saying, this is the date, this is the time, I hope you can join us, and then you cast a wide net? Give me an idea for this, a little bit more tactical type of question, but I'm curious to know, because you do have a lot of great people that attend your events, and they're very busy business people. So is it an email that you'll just send out, or are you also making phone calls on top?
Definitely both. I'll start by saying that when I do get involved with an event, more often than not, I like to do them alone. And because if I'm going to put the effort in, and I'm going to anyway, if I'm a part of a team or if I'm doing it alone, I'd rather just do it alone and put all the effort in and show whomever it is, the attendees, the candidate, everybody involved, have ownership over it, versus sharing ownership. But yes, I do cast a wide net most of the time. Some events I'm very targeted, and again, there are political sensitivities, there are all kinds of other things that I have to be aware of. We all do. But in general, yeah, I cast a wide net, and I'll send out. I do more texting than emailing. I find it's received better. Yeah, I don't do much emailing at all now that I think about it. It's pretty much all text, but I follow up with a phone call, and I do. So what I do is I'll send out texts to, however many people. In the most recent case, I probably sent out texts to 100, 150 people. I got positive responses back almost immediately from maybe 15 or 20. Okay, so 10%, let's say. Well, then there were another handful that said, okay, yeah, I'll let you know. So those went on the maybe list. And then there were the majority who did not respond at all to the text. I try to word the text in a way where it doesn't sound like it's a mass communication.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, it kind of is. And it's hard you can't be perfect at that. So I take the people who are yeses and I make sure to send them another reminder text a week out and a few days out. Because the worst thing in the world is that you think somebody's definitely coming and then they don't.
Or they forget.
And they forget. Yeah. Right. So I'm most protective over those. A lot of people would say, oh, those are in the bank. Let me focus on the people who didn't respond. I focus on the people who said yes, because they are your highest outcome people, highest probability outcome people. So I focus on them. The maybes, I lean on them, of course. You said you'll let me know. Just checking in. I really need you there. Can you be there? And I'll convert some of those. And then the never called kind of people, or never responded, I'll call and I'll make the calls. And I'll make the calls to the others as well. And I do put a lot of work into these, but I'll prioritize the calls to people who did not respond at all. And so it's, hey, I remember I sent you a text last week. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it. I'd really like you to be at this event. Can you help me out? And I do tell them, you're helping me by being there. I make myself vulnerable that way.
Yeah.
I'm not, a lot of people will call and act like they're doing me a favor for me to come to their event, and that just doesn't feel as good as a human. I want to know that I'm giving you something if I'm showing up, because I'd like to give you something. And I think people do want to give to each other. So I do let people know, hey, you'd be doing me a big favor. Can I count on you to be there? And it seems to work fine. Obviously, you're never going to bat 1,000, and I probably, out of the 120 people I invited to that event, I ended up with probably 50 or 60 who came, and then they maybe brought a guest or whatever it may be, and it ended up with about 100 people.
So it takes a lot of work and effort to personally invite these folks, especially they're busy, you're busy, you take time out of your day doing it. For me, it's got a similar feel because you attend a lot of these people's events when you reciprocate.
I do.
And you do it well. But it feels like, and I don't know if you recall as a child growing up, but trading baseball cards, right? I'll give you this one, but you got to give me the next one. And but you don't have that I don't have that mentality of pro quo. I like to just, if I can do it, I'll be there. But then we're asking when it's important to us, and then it's great to see that people are willing to support and reciprocate, because I think we provide value to them, and that's why they're willing to come back and help us out. So that's a great a point of it to acknowledge there.
No, and I totally agree with that. I had this conversation yesterday with a friend who I attended his event yesterday, and he said, he made a joke, and he really was joking, but he said, great, you've attended one of my events. Only a couple more to catch up to how many of yours I've attended for you. And he was right, by the way. He was not wrong. He was not inaccurate. But it does... it's important. I said, listen, you just got to have more events. Otherwise, how am I supposed to come to yours? And it is something that we do for each other. I think it is something that it's going to be hard to get people to show up to your event if you're not attending others.
Yeah.
So it becomes kind of like a full-time job. You got to be always out there, always moving, 3 events a day, that sort of thing. But, it's very easy to say, forget it, I'm not going to make it there today. It's really easy to do that. But then it's really, really hard to count on people to show up when you need them if you haven't put the effort in.
If you're not there depositing some relational value into others.
And it's not always money. Oftentimes I'm not doing events where I'm asking for your money, a fundraiser or anything like that. I'm asking you to come for some other thing. Show up to an SBAM event, right? Small Business Association of Michigan has all kinds of different events. They're free. I definitely want people to be there. There's value for the organization for people to attend, and there's value for the people who attend to attend. It's free. I'm not asking for your money, but I am asking for your time. And if I didn't show up to your event, how can I expect you to do the same for me? It's not exactly a trade, but it certainly is deposits in the bank.
So, attending 2-3 events, I don't want to even guess your calendar in terms of how many events it is on a weekly basis, but I know it's a lot. So do you have to, is this part of your business strategy? Is I am going to be attending events? You mentioned SBAM, and for those of you listening for the first time, Milan was the former chairman of the Small Business Association of Michigan, more than 30,000 members throughout all of Michigan's 83 counties. And I know that you travel the state a lot. You're in Lansing often. And to your point about having the legislators in your coat pocket, it's because you are trying to help solve problems for people when things arise, and things happen all the time, right? And so they lean on you for this type of relationship and maybe some information, some access. But most importantly, I think the way you help people is with time. You save them time. And so how do you calendar all of this out in your event? How do you prioritize your commitments to SBAM? You have some philanthropic interests. You're a business owner, multiple businesses in many different states. So I'm curious to know how you manage it all, and do you allow maybe a certain time a day? All right, I got 12 hours a day that I'm going to leave my house before I come back at the end of the day, and this is what I'm working with. Give us an idea of how you approach your weekly schedule with all of these commitments.
I'm probably not as intentional or strategic about it as I could be. I think the way I view my schedule, the way I think of and picture my schedule, is it's like a room, an empty room, and I just keep pumping air into it. If there's room on the calendar, let's fill it. And so how do I prioritize? Well, there are times where somebody sends me something or I say, oh, I really want to do this. Let me go to this. I look at the calendar and I have a conflict. There's no way I can be two places at once. And you have to make priority decisions in that case. I do, unfortunately, I end up rescheduling a lot of things. I have a dinner meeting with somebody, but this event came up that I really need to be at. Hey, is there any way we can do the dinner a different night? And we do. And I am very, very particular about if I reschedule, that's it. It's got to be done. And so I think everybody deserves one redo, one reschedule, but then you better come through. Myself, most importantly. But yeah, I use a traditional calendar app on my phone to calendar all my events. I go to a lot of stuff. Yesterday, I went downtown for a luncheon event. I mentioned a moment ago that was sort of political in nature, and I find that I will also measure the likelihood of success, whatever success means, in advance. So I knew that yesterday's lunch, even though it was way down, I had to go downtown. Parking was going to be a mess, the whole thing. And the whole thing was going to be about a 45-minute to 60-minute event. I knew it was worth it because I knew this was going to be a high likelihood of something positive coming out of it. And I was right. There are evenings where I have 3 events to go to, and I got to figure out where to go. Election night being a very busy night because I do like to visit candidates on election night, candidates that I've supported. But, I may have one downriver and one up in North Oakland County and one out in West Michigan. And how do you do them all, right? So what I'll say is that it is a juggling act. I think if you are intentional about it, keep your feet moving. People say, when you take a break and look up, I always say, if I take a break and I look up, that's when I slow down. Don't take breaks. Just keep moving.
So you keep it very active intentionally.
I keep it very active. When I get into an event, I immediately go and try and interact with whomever I'm there for, whether it's the host, candidate, speaker, whatever it is, whatever event I'm attending. Make sure that I get some time with them and interact with them, work my way through a room. And if I have somewhere else to be, I will find an opportune moment to walk backward out the door as I run to my car and get to the next event.
So your strategy at these events when you're attending multiple is to for sure say hello to the host or to the most important person in the room that you need to see. Do you have any type of methodology for like out-of-state conferences where people that you don't see frequently, you're kind of just showing up, you're there to learn, you're maybe there to get some information? Do you review attendee lists in advance? I mean, what kind of strategies are you implementing at events outside of, let me make sure I say hello to the host, let me say hello to the special guest, whomever that is? Give us an idea of your mindset and how you approach events.
Yeah, if there's an attendee list available, if that's something like a conference might have. I'm attending a conference next week, for example, on Monday, Tuesday, and it is out of state. I've already gone through the attendee list. And as a matter of fact, that conference does something very slick where you can go on your conference registration profile and sort of click on the people you want to be connected with while you're there. They have them segmented or searchable, indexed by industry or like specific whatever. In this case, it's a healthcare conference. So they'll have all the medical equipment vendors, all the software vendors, all the supply vendors, all the different types of businesses. And then they'll have them also in just alphabetical order by company. So I scanned both lists and I clicked on the areas that I'm interested in as well as the specific companies I'm interested in. And then they'll make sure that we get connected. There's a couple like of networking sessions and they're very good about being organized. That's the best case scenario. In another case, like I go to a big, humongous conference every December in Chicago, 25,000 people, at least 1,000 vendors. It's in Chicago at the McCormick Place. So what I do in advance of that is I look through the exhibitor list and I just kind of circle who I want to see. And there's a map and I'll literally kind of plot a route through the floor to make sure I hit all of them.
That's interesting. Will you ever reach out to them in advance and schedule like 5-minute pull-asides or, short-term meetings just to say hello? Are you that intentional about it, or are you just, I'll stop by these booths in advance?
No. I'm very intentional. So number one, a lot of the visits I'm going to make, for example, this Chicago conference, there's probably a third of the visits I'm going to make to the vendors are people I already know. Maybe I already do business with them, or maybe it's somebody I know and want to see. I'll let them know in advance. Hey, I'm going to be there on Monday and Tuesday. Which days work for you? Can I come by and we can chat for a little bit? And I'll make sure they're on my calendar so that as I'm walking through the conference, I know where to be when. Then there are certain vendors that I'm just interested in what they have to say and what they have to show. So I don't make appointments. I just show up and look. And if I see something interesting, maybe I'll talk to somebody there. And a lot of them are swings and misses. I go and I say, oh, this isn't what I thought it was at all. Never mind. I'm not interested. So I move on. And then there's another group, smaller group, 5 to 10% of the vendors maybe, where I know I want to learn about them. I don't know anything about them. And so, yeah, I'll reach out in advance and say, can I make an appointment to demo your software or talk to your rep or whatever it may be? But yeah, I do feel like if I'm going to allocate the time to go somewhere, particularly out of town with all the time you spend traveling to and from and all that, I need to make it as fruitful as possible. So yeah, I'm very intentional about doing it in advance and making sure. And it doesn't take that long. Everything I just said, you can do it in a half an hour. It's not like it takes hours and hours to do. You can do it pretty quickly, especially once you get good at it and you kind of know what you're trying to get done.
Yeah, you have a plan in place. You're not just showing up and say, "Oh, I'm here at the event." You actually have some direction of what you want to do and some goals. You took time away from your desk, your family, golf. You want to make sure you maximize those efficiencies. I would like to know, because you do come across an incredibly powerful group of people in business and politics. You're always surrounded by these folks, and you've built relationships with them. When you have an opportunity to meet somebody that is of high caliber, wherever they are in their career, what type of preparation do you set forth in advance of those meetings? Are you doing? How do you do your? I want to call it your recon. I mean, how are you preparing for these meetings when you're meeting with a U.S. ambassador, heads of state, or the head of a Fortune 500 company? What are some of the strategies that you implement?
So Google's a powerful tool, and we can learn a lot very quickly these days. I don't know what it would have been like 25 years ago, but
LexisNexis.
Yeah, exactly. The Dewey Decimal System. But I definitely, as often as I can, do a few minutes of research on somebody. What I'm looking for is not the first 5 items on their Wikipedia. I suppose everybody knows those and everybody can talk about those. Though I do make sure I know who I'm talking to and what their background is or whatever it may be. What I'm looking for is, where did they go to undergrad? How old are their kids? What is something that is specific to that person that they, I'm sure, hold dear in some way that has some connection to me that I can use as a way to create a connection? Because when people meet Bill Clinton and they ask him, about his friendship with the United Kingdom and Tony Blair and how he navigated that whole situation, that's what you read about in, his Wikipedia page. But if you know that he was the Attorney General of Arkansas before he was the governor of Arkansas, and that, Lou Holtz, the old football coach from Notre Dame, was a coach at Arkansas at the time, and you can ask him questions about that. He's got great stories, by the way, about that. These are the types of things I try to figure out. And again, I don't spend hours and hours on this. I don't think I can. I don't think anybody can. But I think in a few minutes of focused research, of focused, thoughtful reading, you can learn quite a bit.
What's the most amount of time you'd be willing to invest in somebody that's high level, right? Let's say you get a meeting on your calendar. This is somebody that you've been eyeing for a year as a prospect, nationally recognized, important person, whatever their background is in business or politics. But a few minutes is maybe not enough. Have you ever gone to the length of reading their book or reading articles that they've written? I mean, what kind of lengths have you gone to understand more and prepare yourself more to gain the high level of confidence that you have to walk into a room full of meetings with senior executives or senior people?
So what I would say is that if I'm meeting with them, in your example, somebody very widely known and respected, somebody that I personally know or respect and want to know, if I'm getting that meeting with them that I've wanted for so long, let's say, I've already read their book. That's why I wanted the meeting, right? Or I've read their articles or whatever it may be. I'll give you a perfect example. There's Ed Bastian is the CEO of Delta Airlines and somebody whose career I've kind of followed. I'm a big fan of his. I like his writing. I like his thinking. Jamie Dimon is another one that you don't have to love him or agree with everything he says, but you can't deny he's a very brilliant person and is opinionated and thoughtful about his opinions. And these are people that I've had the good fortune of meeting. I certainly didn't have a 1 hour sit down with them, but I spent 5 minutes with them. And the reason it was important to me, though, is because I already knew a lot about them. And that goes back to I read a lot. I'm consuming information as often as I can, as much as I can, because I want to, when in those moments where it's time to be able to connect with someone, that I'm already armed with the information, the background. The other day, I was with, this is actually a learning experience for me. The other day, I was with somebody who is involved with airports and is an executive at airports. And I said to him, I don't know how it came up, but something came up about the former CEO of Delta Airlines, who previously was the CEO of Northwest Airlines, the predecessor. His name's Richard Anderson. But after that, after Delta, he went on to run United Healthcare, massive healthcare conglomerate that I'm also a fan of their work and their strategy. And then he was tapped by President Trump to run Amtrak and to fix Amtrak. And I had opportunity to meet him when he came here to Detroit to talk about Amtrak. It might have been 2017, 18, somewhere in there during the Trump presidency. And so I said that to this airport executive because, his career goes back 30 years. And so they must have interacted. And I said, yeah, I'm a big fan of Richard Anderson. I saw him speak when he came to talk about Amtrak, and I got to meet him for a few minutes. And this person said to me, oh, wow, yeah, he's really tough to work with, and he's very demanding, and he's good at what he does. But, my point is that I hadn't done my homework. I haven't read Richard Anderson's book. I had never met anybody who'd met him before or worked with him before. And I very quickly was corrected that, while he may be a great thinker, he's a tough guy to be around. My point being that usually I already know what I'm talking about. But when I don't, it shows.
Right. So you are taking a lot of time to read and research people that are very significant, high level to you. You're not just walking into a meeting blind with these types of people. This is
100%.
You've already focused on it. You're interested in them. You have done your due diligence and you prepare yourself, and that gives you the confidence that you need to talk to these types of CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. And I think that's an important part of preparation when we're talking about networking with people that are above us, is being prepared. And that gives us the confidence to walk into that room and believe that we are supposed to be there.
I totally agree with that, being prepared. And I think being prepared goes to confidence and comfort more than it actually goes to any specific information. And so what I try to remember when I'm meeting somebody of prominence like that is that while they, of course, live a life of prominence, and there's a reason that they are prominent, they still go home and, have to take the trash out, and they still have a family, and their brother still doesn't think much of them. Their brother gives them noogies. So, I try to remember that most people, no matter how prominent, unless they're part of the British royal family, no matter how prominent they are still like just regular people also. And I try to connect with people on that level as well.
One of the things, to your point, that they are just regular people, and we have to kind of remove this notion that they may be above us in some areas of life that we have not yet reached, but they're still accessible. And one of the things that I have found, people have come to me in the past, clients, and people that have said, I find it very challenging to reach some high-level people, business people, because they're so successful, they don't need anything from me. And the truth is, successful people need things from all of us. They just need different things. And part of that need is maybe it's an introduction, maybe it's information, maybe it's helping them see a different perspective on something that they're focused on. And one of the ways that I've leveraged information and to be able to build relationships with people, and you've done this very well, is in philanthropy and finding, and politics for that matter, but finding people that are so successful that they're willing to write a check to support an idea or to support a dream or to support a mission when they don't really get anything tangible in advance, but they're willing to develop relationships with us because we have the same common interests,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're focused on either winning this campaign or this capital campaign or raising money for this cause. And so I've developed relationships with people. I know you have as well, but I'd like to know a little bit more about your strategy of developing relationships with people that are, very high level CEOs and very successful, but you're aligned on this political mission together, or you're aligned on raising money for this philanthropic cause, like the Children's Foundation as an example.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to learn a little bit more about how you invest your time, because anybody could write a check, and a check will get the attention, depending on how big the check is, will get the attention of people. But you invest so much time with others. So give us a little bit more about your strategy of how you choose the right programs, the right people, the right projects to invest time in.
So you're right about the philanthropy element, non-business, let's just say, non-profit making. I got involved with the Children's Foundation a dozen years ago, something like that. And, I remember going back into the 2008, 9, 10 range, somewhere in there. And there's a person I know, a mentor of mine, Tom Goss, who I remember him saying to me, yeah, I've got this board meeting. I'm on the board of the Boys and Girls Club, and I'm on the board of this, and I'm on the board of that. And I said, Tom, I got to ask you, how do you get on all these boards? And at that time, I was on 0 boards. And now I have friends that call me a professional board member. So that's my profession, actually.
It truly is.
To Vinnie Brown especially, he thinks all I do is go to board meetings. He said to me, well, it's kind of funny. The way it works is you get on one board, and then the members of that board are always members of other boards too. And they will, when thinking about who to augment their organization with, will grab you. If you invest of yourself, show up, provide value. And we also both know board members of different boards who are rarely there and rarely, contributing much. They're there in name only. And so you don't think of them when you're trying to recruit to another board. Well, the point is that I got put on my first board, which kind of was the Small Business Association of Michigan, I think. I don't know if Children's Foundation or SBAM came first. They were around the same time. But I got put on Children's Foundation. Why? Because I had some friends who were starting this new Leaders for Kids charity. And how did I make those friends? Well, another friend connected me to the Brooks Patterson marketing team, and I was an Oakland County business guy. And so the point is that if you just make friends, a lot of times those friends will lead you to other friends, and then they led me to a board, which then led me to 19 other boards.
Is that the number?
Well, no, it's not. But
accumulation, right?
It is. I do, I try to be a little bit, you cannot give of yourself infinitely, endlessly, right? So at some point you hit a limit, and I try not to be on boards that I cannot contribute myself fully, devote myself fully. Recently, Brian Callie and I had that conversation. He said, I was doing a little house cleaning at SBAM, and I noticed you're on every board, every committee, every task force. Would you like to stay on them? And so we did a little inventory, and I withdrew from a few of them, which he said is just fine and great, and it'll also make room for some fresh blood. And it allows me to focus on the things that I can and want to focus on. But yeah, I think serving on these boards, you meet great people. It's typically the people who are out there doing whatever it is they're doing are the ones involved in leadership of these organizations, whether they're philanthropic, political, or otherwise. So if I associate myself with those people, they're typically also associated with other things, maybe profit-making business things, and friendships and relationships and mutual respect are what create opportunity. I will first think of somebody from one of those boards I sit on who's in a particular business, if that's what I'm looking for, before I go, Googling or anything else.
You call them first.
I call them first.
Sure.
I know, through an organization I'm active with. I know Mark Angott is a great executive search guy in Oakland County. So if that's what I'm looking for, I'm going to call him first, and maybe it won't be the right fit, but he certainly will point me in the right direction. And I can trust that because I've built a rapport with him and a friendship and a mutual respect.
I have found in my career or through my research, really, that there's probably 4 or 5 different areas or communities that you can build around yourself that are reasonable, that are wise to do so because of the relationships that you build, but also because they're from different sectors. So one of them being a philanthropic, one of them being a business association, one of them being maybe a cultural institution, like you said, the DIA or DSO earlier, right? That would be one. And then maybe one, you could kind of lump sports into it in one way or another. But have you found that limiting your board involvement in these type of organizations, so let's say business, philanthropic, community, cultural institution, in another, do you kind of limit your involvement? Say, I'm going to be a part of 4 boards, and these are the 4 type of boards that I want to.
I probably should.
Yeah. Okay. So you don't. So you don't. You kind of.
I don't at the moment.
You go where the greatest need is.
I do. Probably go where the squeakiest wheels are too. If somebody asks me to be a part of something more than once, it just gets more of my attention naturally.
Hard to say no.
I'm human, you know. It is hard to say no. I'm not great at saying no. But I also, as I step back at times, I think about, okay, can I really do all of this? And I will at times bow out of things, respectfully saying, listen, I cannot continue to provide value. I'm just taking up space. But I will try to suggest somebody who could provide value. Try to leave a parting gift if I can. When I'm not able to give of myself as much as I want to and should. And like I said, when I do something, I do it all the way. I want to be fully committed to it. I like being good at stuff. So the best way to be good at something is to put your full effort into it. Well, you can't put your full effort into everything always infinitely. So when I hit those limits, I try to find somebody else to do it and who could do it better than I can.
Kind of paying it forward for that person and for the organization. I've done my due diligence. I think John would be a great fit for the board based on his expertise here, his relationships, and it's good to also leave things better than you found it. So hopefully John will do a good job representing your, filling in your void that you brought to the team.
And in the case of me leaving the SBAM board, I found one Derek Dickow.
Oh, yes. I remember the conversation. You looked at me and said, I'd like to get you involved, but you got to be present. And I said, I don't do anything unless I'm present. So I appreciate that introduction. Brian and I have known each other for years, but I never thought about joining the board or being even an active member of the association. But it's been tremendously valuable to my career. And I think that I'm at a good place with SBAM and also making some deposits into others, which is what I think you wanted me to do by having that conversation. I got 2 other areas of interest, and then we'll wrap up for today. This has been a lot of fun and fast, which I knew it would be. But I would like to get a little bit of insight from you on how to, in business, best leverage political relationships. And you don't have to give us your secret sauce, but give us some ideas. I remember you one time, this was in January of 2018. You and I attended the auto show with different candidates.
Oh, yeah. I was like, where's he going with this?
Yeah. I was with the Lieutenant Governor, and you were then with former Senate Minority Leader, Gretchen Whitmer, who's currently today's governor. And you and I, similar roles.
Yeah.
Walking the candidates through this sea of 8,000 people, or however many thousands of people, everybody dressed up in the black ties. And that is one of the nights that I tell people all the time, like, be prepared.
Ooh, yeah.
Be prepared well in advance, because there are 3 or 4 events that you probably should attend if you're running for political office. And every time I turned around, there were you and now Governor Gretchen Whitmer at a similar event, a similar function. So, I tell people when I work with a candidate, it's not a job for me. For me, it's a passion. And yes, I'm a consultant, so sometimes I do get compensated for my strategy and my work. But it's more of a genuine interest in the person, right? You believe in them, you want to see them successful. And so I'm willing to do a lot of things. So sometimes I tell people, when I'm on the campaign trail, I am part security, I am part driver, I am part consultant, part friend, part body person. And I saw you doing something very similar in that role, but you're doing it as a friend. And you were doing that with her because I think you saw a candidate in there that had potential to be victorious. And obviously she was. So congratulations to you on that. But give us an idea of how to best leverage, because you work with candidates at the highest levels of government in our country, but give us an idea of how you best leverage politics to help business.
Well, so I'll start by saying I don't know if I figured that out yet. Let me just say, but I'll tell you what I think. But that night at the auto show, by the way, I just want to say, yes, preparation for an event like that is paramount. And going into that event in particular, I remember talking to the campaign staff about the strategy for the night, because it's a 3-hour sprint, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. And that event, among a few others, are the barometers that the mucky mucks use to decide who's a candidate and who's not. Not showing up is not an option. Showing up and failing to impress is potentially worse than not showing up.
Correct.
And showing up and impressing, doing it the right way. I have a vision of what that right way is, and so do you. Can launch a career. It can launch a candidacy. And so we had a whole 4-man team that night. There was a spotter, there was an interrupter, there was a body man. It was a whole
introducer.
It was an introducer, yeah. It was the spotter was the person who said, okay, that's this so-and-so, blah, blah, whispers in the candidate's ear, this is who they are, so that when they go meet them, they are armed with some piece of information, at least a name. The interrupter comes and says, Gretchen, can I borrow you for a moment? Excuse me, I'm sorry. And interrupts the conversation to move on to the next, because you got to move. You can't get stuck. Anyways, that was a really fun night, and I think it was terribly impactful on her candidacy. Not that I take credit for it. She was amazing and is amazing.
She's a very astute retail politician. Amazing. She's terrific at what she does.
I've ever seen.
She does a very good job.
Every room she walks into, she leaves with people who are positive about her, even if they are opposed to her politically. She is likable, lovable, and can change hearts and minds. It's an amazing, one-of-a-kind talent. How do I leverage political relationships into business? You know, I'm not great at it. Let me just say, I don't think I'm that great at it. And I think I have a lot to learn. What I will say is that I make the relationships first. I pave the road. I build the bridges, not knowing if I'm ever going to drive down them. And I suppose it's been, now at this point, 16, 17 years I've been doing this. And at some point, you sort of just run into the same people. Michigan's not a huge place, particularly in politics. And the same person that I met who was a state rep from downriver 15, 18 years ago, now is the deputy chief of staff at a county or something like that. And you tend to run into the same people. And if you've been around long enough, and if you give of yourself and leave positive impressions with people and try to create connections with people, you'll eventually run into a friend somewhere, because eventually everybody hopefully becomes your friend. The reason I say I've been doing this 16, 17 years is that ethnically, culturally, Indian people, and my family's from India. My parents came from India about 50 years ago. But what came with them was this idea that politics and politicians are something to be avoided. In India, particularly 50 years ago, politicians were, if you came across them, they were probably going to take something from you. And they were probably going to try and create some trouble for you so they could take something from you. At least that was the fear. So my parents came here with that same mentality. And so I was taught not to engage in politics and to avoid politics if possible. And when I was in my mid-20s, I met a friend, Phil Kavanaugh, who at the time was a county commissioner. And Phil remains today one of my closest friends and has gone on to be a state rep and is a prominent attorney in town. And Phil taught me inadvertently, I don't think he meant to do this, he took me to a few events with him, and he taught me this inextricable link between business and politics. And I started to make friends, and I caught the bug, the political bug, so I had just a natural interest. I wanted to go to everything. But what it has done for me today is that if there is a person you want to meet in politics or business, I've been to every event. I put in the footwork. I can probably get to them in some way or another, and get to them in a warm way where somebody who feels warmly about me can connect me, or I know them already. How do you actually make politics equal business? I haven't figured it out yet. But what I will say is that there are times now, more than ever, where I see an opportunity in business. I read about something or I see something that's happening in a city, a township, a county, the state, whatever it may be. And I find out who, because I do the research, who might be a decision maker or an influencer in that process. I know that guy. He was a city councilman 12 years ago. And, I attended his event or I met him at a city council meeting or whatever it may be. So I go and I try and rekindle those friendships and make something out of it. Now, are they just handing me business? No, I still have to compete. I still have to be the best at what I do. But certainly it's easier to demonstrate that you're the best when you have a friendly face on the other side.
And so a lot of it goes back to your knowledge and preparation of what's happening in the market with your ability to give in your world, whether it's in business or politics, help people along their way, having no idea if the road is going to lead anywhere, but just treating people the same. And I think that it comes across well. So I have to disagree. I think you're great at what you do and with creating this intersection of politics and business. I don't think that there are more astute business leaders than you in the state that understand the concept of helping, and you truly do it in a bipartisan way. So it's been, I enjoy watching it. I think you do a great job, and I'm always appreciative of collaborating with you on events. And I know that maybe someday I'll be helping you run for governor at some point, but we'll figure all that out someday.
I would have taken quite a wrong turn if that's what happens.
Let's follow it up, and we'll final closing thoughts here. I want to, because in this program here, this is targeted to help people build relationships, help them with networking in business and politics. And so, typically when somebody's watching this, they're in a position of need. They're looking to gain information and insight from people that we have on this program. And so I appreciate you being on and giving us your time and talents to share with us a little bit more about your background, about how you do things and your approach. But if you had to give advice to your younger self when it came to networking and to building relationships with people, what type of advice would you offer to your younger self?
I think I would have early on, mid-20s, I started to go to events and meet people. And I was sort of ravenous about meeting more and more people who were making a career out of this, elected officials or bureaucrats, whatever it may be. I think what I would have done a little more of is I would have attended more. So when a candidate or an elected official, and often they're the same person, when they have events, public events like coffee hours, our state reps and state senators tend to have these coffee hours in their district on Mondays and Fridays when they're not in session. You go, if they're meeting at the Panera in your hometown, or forget it, your hometown, maybe it's 4 districts over in their hometown, and they're sitting there for an hour. Nobody shows up. Nobody shows up. Or if they do show up, it's the same people who show up week after week, and those people are valuable, but fresh faces, positive energy, somebody coming with, hey, I just came here to meet you, and I'd like to introduce myself and tell you about myself. The candidates, the elected officials, again, those are often the same person. It has so much value to them. Same thing goes when they do a public event at a park on a Saturday. Oh, we've got a barbecue we're doing this Saturday. Come on out. Go. Show up at those kinds of things as much as you show up at, the political fundraisers or the networking events or whatever. I find that when you're in a professional networking event, whatever that looks like or whatever it's called, you're swimming with sharks. And when you go to the Saturday barbecue in their home district, you're swimming with the public. And so you have a much better chance at making a direct connection and impact on them than when you're in the room with like 20 white-collar lawyers and a bunch of business owners and all that. Yes, those are valuable, and yes, I do a ton of those, and that is also where I meet other people. But what I would say is that, one, put in the time to go to a city council meeting, get there 15 minutes early. The city councilmen are all there. Have a chat with them. Tell them you're here and you're interested. You don't have to stay for the whole 3-hour meeting. Maybe look at the agenda, find an item that interests you, and go to that. Go speak during public commentary during these meetings. Mm-hmm. The people who speak during public commentary are listened to by the elected officials and all of a sudden have some connection and value to them. So those are the things I would have done more of. I think, I didn't necessarily have a plan and I didn't necessarily have a strategy early on. I just sort of showed up to stuff and made as many friends as I could. And it worked to some extent, but if I had to go do it over again, I would have done more of that, which is now what I do today.
What are you doing? Yeah. So your advice is to have a plan, read a ton, learn about people in advance of meeting them, have a strategy that you implement when you attend events, and be thoughtful in where you put your time, where you put your talent, and where you spend your money in terms of donations and contributions, and also just be aware of just helping people at every stage, because you don't know when that person who's starting out at city council and 10 years later they could be the governor of the state. So you never know.
Very much could be. And I often say that losing political campaigns are often some of my greatest friendships and opportunities for the future, because obviously we want everybody to win and everybody we support. And when they win, that's great. But when they lose, and people lose too, you and I have both been part of campaigns that were not successful. I find that those candidates, first of all, they're not just going to go home and do nothing. They're going to go on to their next chapter. And I like to be a part of that next chapter. And the relationship we built during a unsuccessful campaign can often be more powerful than victory.
I couldn't agree more. I think the silver lining of all of these campaigns and are the relationships that we built with people that, in my view, are every relationship that you and I look at. We think about 10 years, 20 years. Can we be friends with these people? I mean, this is our mentality. And so I hope that you got to hear some information from my dear friend, Milan Gandhi, president and CEO of MedShare, based in Southfield, presence all over the state and in multiple states in his business and practices, and somebody that gives without any expectation. In my opinion, one of the senior leaders here in the state as a business person, but also someone that understands the intersection of business and politics, leads by example, and does so in a very thoughtful and consistent way, which is important too. So I really appreciate you being on today. This was a lot of fun.
This was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
this is like one of our normal chats.
This is what we talk about, and we always talk about how can we help, what can we do, and this is part of what we can do, is helping to inspire others and giving them the information to be better.
Just put some mics and cameras in front of us, and we just wind us up, and we can go.
All we need now is a couple steaks and some potatoes. We'll be good. Well, this has been great. I hope you've enjoyed it. Milan, thank you very much. I'm going to shake your hand.
Thank you, Derek.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this conversation with Milan Gandhi, president and CEO of MedShare, talking about relationship building, networking at a high level, and how to leverage business and politics and the intersection that happens. You know, most people, again, are really good at collecting dots. Our guest today is an expert at connecting the dots. Hope you've enjoyed us. For the Power Connector podcast, I'm Derek Dickow. Please download and find this podcast where podcasts are available. Please share with others, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you.